All right, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Elite 100. If we could get you guys to pop on your cameras. Great to see everybody. Hopefully you had an amazing weekend. We're coming into Thanksgiving, which is my favorite time of the year. And before we get going with the Mastermind Principles and Wins, I want to welcome Mike Shine to the group here. He's checking us out, looking to join us. He's actually a friend of Kyle's. We've been working together in some financial things and got real close real quick here, and he's checking the group out. And I also want to welcome our newest member, Chris Pepin, which I don't see. Where are you hiding? Who's been a referral of, there you are. What's happening, bud? How you doing? He's a referral of Chris Patterson. So those guys have been friends for quite a while, colleagues. And I got to know Chris Pepin, and he liked what he saw in the group. So he's here checking us out as well. So welcome to the group. And I just want to recap kind of what the group focuses on. You know, today we'll be going over content. We're always studying something together in mindset, right? Connecting the source, spirituality, whether it's metaphysics or science or theology. And today's session will be on that. But we also, as you guys know, we do business development. We do hot seats. We have quite a few of you that are up for your hot seats. We have Corbin hasn't done one, Chris, Erica, Chris Patterson, Chris Pepin. When you're ready after a few weeks and you want to jump into the hot seat, it's where we just pour into you and what you're doing. You really just tell the group what you're all about, what you're looking to grow, any challenges you might have. And we open up our hearts and souls and we pour right into you guys. So when you feel comfortable, when you feel ready, you just ask for that. So what else do we got here? I think that's it for housekeeping. Why don't we start with the Mastermind Principles? Who would love to read those, and I can pull them up? Maybe somebody who hasn't read them in a while.
I'd happily read them, Brian, if you pull them up.
Okay. Mr. Ian.
I release myself to the mastermind because I am strong when I have others to help me. I believe the combined intelligence of the mastermind creates a wisdom far beyond my own. I understand that I will more easily create positive results in my life when I'm open to looking at myself, my problems, and opportunities from another's point of view. I decide to release my desire totally in trust to the mastermind, and I'm open to accepting new possibilities. I forgive myself for mistakes I have made. I also forgive others who have hurt me in the past, so I can move into the future with a clean slate. I ask the mastermind to hear what I really want, my goals, my dreams, and my desires. And I hear my mastermind partners supporting me in my fulfillment. I accept. I know, relax, and accept, believing that the working power of the mastermind will respond to my every need. I am grateful knowing this is so. Dedication and covenant. I now have a covenant in which it is agreed that the mastermind shall supply me with an abundance of all things necessary to live a success-filled and happy life. I dedicate myself to be of maximum service to the world and my fellow human beings, to live in a manner that will set the highest example for others to follow, and to remain an open channel of God's will. I go forth with a spirit of enthusiasm, excitement, and expectancy.
Thanks, brother. And for those of you that are new, we always read those every time, right? We set the intention of the mastermind because in a real mastermind, you come to give. We don't come to get. We end up getting a lot of things, obviously, but in a real mastermind, you actually give a shit about the human beings that are in a group. You get to know each other, love each other, and we all come to give. So I think it's one of the things that really sets us apart in the Elite 100. Who has some wins they want to share to get the energy going? Greg? I know you got a few, you and Liz.
Yeah, so we just got back from a week with Ivan and Bella in Argentina. And man, just talk about just love. We never had such a good time, by two people. I mean, they were truly our hosts down there in every which way. We spent every day together for a week and just shared love. And of course, the love, Argentina is an amazing country that we really didn't know much about. But we learned a lot of Spanish and we taught Ivan a lot of slang words in English. So we just had a ball together and just so happy and grateful that we could do that.
I love that. We saw the pictures. Looks like you had a great time. We had the pleasure of spending some time with Ivan and Bella in their hometown in Puerto Rico. So I definitely recommend it. A lot of fun. Matt, what about you?
First of all, Nelson, I love the Christmas tree, and you felt my energy because I said in my mind, I said, and you turned around and looked at it. So,
That's awesome.
all kinds of wins. The big one, or the two big ones I'll share is, we had changed our morning routine, getting heavy into meditation, and it started. It's funny because Jen and I were talking, and she was like, "Man, I feel like you've been more productive at different points in time." And I said, "You know what? The most productive I was is when I really followed Miracle Morning kind of to a T, and then stacked the mindset and the thinking into results on top of that. So I've gotten back into that over the past week and been consistent with that, even on Saturday and Sunday, believe it or not.
Oh, wow. Nice.
And so that's been a big win. And then we also have had some misalignment of energy as far as some partners with us in business, and it started manifesting physically with us, and we finally completely cut that off as of yesterday. And I got to tell you, with just making that decision of just ripping the Band-Aid off, because we were going to keep this person on until the end of the month, and just by ripping that off yesterday, energetically, like so much has released inside the household, and it's just been absolutely amazing. So we're in an amazing space right now.
I love that. Yeah. And I've been there multiple times myself. When you finally make the decision to do the hard thing and you cast it off, it feels light and airy. So I've definitely been there for sure. Congratulations. Not always easy, pulling the trigger on stuff like that. Nelson?
Yeah, I'm stacking them up. And yeah, that's a Georgia Bulldogs Christmas tree, by the way, for anybody wondering. That's why it's black and red. That is a win because they keep winning. That's my team. That's my alma mater. So I'm stoked about their championship season run again.
Love it.
And then one, just to be vulnerable, I got a couple more after this, but one of the most important ones is over the past 4 or 5 months, my romance wheel has gone way out. So that's a huge win for me and the wife, right? And it's going to continue to be awesome. So I'm stoked about that, obviously. And then I went to a trade show last week that I've been to before multiple times. And it's a bunch of metal and industrial fabricators. It was such a huge success because we planned it out strategically. And the conversations I had there, I got a stack of organized leads on my desk. 4 of them are huge companies that I've been talking to for many, many years. And one of the things Chris and I talk about all the time is everything changes with time and circumstance. So as I was there, part of me was hesitating in going and talking to these big, huge, I'm talking about city block size trade show booths, right? And but I was like, you know what? Nope. The people that I talk to, everything changes. Maybe there's new people. Maybe they have a change of heart. Sure enough, 4 huge companies said, yeah, you know what? They recognized me from my relentless follow-up and said, yeah, let's talk. It's time. So that's a win. And then I also closed right at the beginning of that trade show, another huge, relatively large size deal for us. So it's been an awesome week and a half, or for my wins.
No, that's awesome. I can literally see the energy coming off of you. And it's fun. I was just on a call with somebody else that we're interviewing to come into the Elite 100, and we're talking about benefits and stuff. And obviously the income and stuff is great. And we're talking about some of the other ones, and I was trying to explain to him the peace of mind, the calmness, the relationships, the living from the inside out benefit. It's a little bit of a challenge to explain that to somebody who's not in it, So maybe I could actually have him talk to you, because I love when we have wins that are outside of money. Everybody here is winning financially, but I love when we get to the deeper ones that are more impactful, in my opinion. So maybe if you're open to it, maybe I'll have him chat with you, because I found myself having a little bit of a challenge explaining in a way that he got it.
Yeah, happy to.
And
Let me know.
he said, well, the finance thing alone is enough to join. I'm like, that's not why I want you to join, though.
Yeah.
We like in a mastermind, you come to give. It's a community, it's a family. So yeah, I'd love to connect.
Let me know when you need me.
Yeah, thanks, bud. Awesome. Well, great wins. I love all that. As you guys know, we're masterminding and God works through you. I'm gonna pull it up here and we'll just continue on our journey here, masterminding this. And again, as we're reading along, any single one of you at any time can just raise your hand or say pause or something and interject on your comments, because this really works well when we hear all people's different points of view. So Mr. Patterson, with your angelic voice, would you mind leading us in the first part of the readings here?
Sure. Am I just reading the highlighted areas?
No,
or-
the whole thing. So this is my version. I highlighted things for certain reasons.
Gotcha.
This is my actual book. I've read this book at least a dozen times. I've studied it for over a year. There's so much in here. And just so some of the newer people know, this is not a religious book, even though it uses God and Jesus. It's a theological book, and we mastermind in the concept of the human connection to spirituality. But yeah, just maybe start here.
Brian, before we start, where is this? I'm looking to follow along my own book. Where are we? Which chapter? And
So this is a digital book, and I think it's chapter 4, but it says location 184 of 1327, but it's digital. So I can go to the chapters after. I think it's chapter 4 or 5.
Thank you.
All right. I'll start with, do you see, Brian?
Sure. Yep. Perfect.
Do you see what Jesus is pointing out in this story? He is showing the two possibilities within you. You were born free, but you can use your freedom in any way that you choose. You can live in the heights of spiritual consciousness, or you can live in the depths of human consciousness. You can choose to think wrong, or you can choose to think right. You can remain where you are, or you can live in the Father's house. You can live with the greedy self, or you can live with the generous self. You can live with the careless self, or you can live with the careful self. You can live with your worst self, or you can live with your best self. God has given you that power, and you can use it as you will. You were born into this world both human and divine. You have a human personal body, which is subject to sin, sickness, and death, and you have a spiritual body subject only to God. So there is a choice to be made. You must first decide whether you are going to live in the fugitive.
So I wanted to go back a second there, because this part here where it says you can choose to think wrong, or you can choose to think right.
It's the law of polarity right there.
Law of polarity. It's also the law of assumption. And this happens everywhere all the time. When we pull up the wheel of life and you're looking at finance and business and relationship and spirituality, we're always assuming about all of these different areas. And you're either, and I don't like to say wrong or right. I like to say you can choose in a way that's serving you or not serving you. It's not really wrong and right is like negative and positive, but it's either serving your cause or it's not. It's self-sabotage, right? If we're always assuming in the wrong direction about other people, about business, what if I don't get the contract? What if you do get the contract? It's just simple little things that happen all the time about everything. What if I fail? What if I succeed? So what do you guys think about that? You can choose to think wrong, or you can choose to think right. Does that bring up anything? Dan?
It reminds me of the word decision that we often study, which the root of it is to cut off all other options. And there's a lot of binary kind of things in this paragraph, right? So you can't be in both worlds at once, and it doesn't serve you to go back and forth. So I think of the word decision, which is decide you're going to live with your greedy self, or decide you're going to live with your generous self, but land in one and stay there. Going back and forth is resistance.
I wasn't thinking about that perspective, but you're right. It is the polar opposite. Thinking, wrong or right, negative or positive. You have a choice in every single scenario. So why not choose to always either think in the positive direction, or to assume in the direction that's going to serve your C-type goal? So I love that perspective, Dan. Matt?
I'm just feeling Esther Hicks on this one in regards to going upstream or downstream, right? And the right way would be to go downstream and be in flow with spirit.
Flow, yeah.
Just turning the other way and trying to paddle upstream.
Yeah, Esther really talks about the law of non-resistance all the time, getting in flow with universal consciousness. There's an entity that helps us create things, whatever you guys believe in, and we can either align with it, which is easy, calm, and effortless, or we can hustle and grind and go against natural flow. Creation is not supposed to be, at least in my opinion and what I've studied, it's not supposed to be a hustle and a grind and difficult. A sapling just grows effortlessly in the wind, right? There's no, it's not forced. So Esther, and maybe Maddie can chime in, she studies Esther a lot here. she really believes in aligning with the natural causes in the universe that create, and it should be easy, calm, and effortless. Dan, do you want to take over here?
Christ self of spirit and whoa, wait a minute.
I think I lost it. There we go. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Christ's self of spirit and truth. You must decide on which side of your nature you are going to act, think, and live. And when he came to himself, a voice said, "Get busy, straighten yourself out. Let your Christ self take over." Do you too hear that voice? Your problems have to do with this very matter. They tell you that there is an adjustment in consciousness which must be made. They indicate your need to unify your outer self with the inner self, for personality is the cause of all of your troubles. When you can say with St. Paul, "It is no longer I, personality, that live, but Christ liveth in me," the barrier between you and your God will be broken down. By leaving his father's house, the prodigal son automatically cut himself off from his source. He was like the people of whom Jeremiah wrote, "For my people have committed two evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters, and hewed them out cisterns, broken cisterns that can hold no water." My people, you and you, where are we? I totally lost it. You and you have forsaken the source. We have made cisterns that cannot hold the precious substance of life. What is the basic lesson of this parable? It is this: if you want to be successful, if you want to be well, if you want to be prosperous, if you want to attract the best from life, you must stay home. You must maintain the oneness with God. You must know him at the center of your being.
Let's chat about that for a second. It says, if you want to be well, you must stay home. Maddie?
I love these paragraphs. So I do believe in God, and I've actually been reading the Bible a bit, just to have a further understanding of how everything truly is one. When it says you must stay home, and when it's talking about leaving the house, right? If I listened to this 5 years ago, I would have been like, oh my God, get me off this call. Because I would have thought of it as like, you know, being with this man in the sky or like not. And that didn't make sense to me. I think the only way that you know this is through experience and knowing how to, right? Neville Goddard, feeling is a secret. I think the only way to know when you're home and when you're not is through experience of how it feels when you make certain decisions, how it feels when you're doing things. Because truly it's your feeling is your guide in this, right? When you feel, it doesn't matter how anyone else feels, right? If they're all doing something, if you feel here, like in your chest or in your belly, that this isn't right for you, you've got to obey that. You've got to follow that. I've made decisions the past 2 years that my logical mind did not want to do. But I had that knowingness and that feeling in my chest or my belly. And I was like, screw it, let me just follow it and see what happens. And through doing that, I was able to grow really close, because when you cut off all other voices in 3D, you know, even your mentors, like your parents, like when you stop relying on people and humans because they're flesh, just like I am, you are, and you can only rely on one voice and you've got nowhere else to go. You can only obey that voice. You can only follow that voice. And for me, that's when I got really close, or I thought of being home was only when I started following that voice.
I love that. It's what people call, I guess, connecting to source, right? Outside of humanity.
Yeah, giving yourself no other option but to connect, but to listen to that voice, and then giving yourself time to receive the guidance that it's giving you.
Well, that can be a massive challenge, especially for those of you that are running big companies with lots of humans running around that are part of your decision-making team. So that is an interesting point of view. I know I saw you do a couple of things that I was like, oh, I was surprised And like you said, it came to you, so you just did it.
Yeah.
And it was really,
There's-
really cool to watch from the outside.
There's a lot of rules that personal development makes up. And just like how we were before personal development, we thought we were in our invisible prisons. Personal development as an industry also has its own invisible prisons of what's right and wrong. And so finding out what your truth is through God, through source is important.
Well, I definitely agree with that. And I think, and I remember talking to Bob about this, when you take a human being at a very low level of awareness and you try to bring them to 100 without going, right? So I feel that the personal development industry, depending on who we study, is a stepping stone of awareness. And the next rung, it's like, well, that kind of makes sense. Let me try that. And then the next rung and the next rung is, in my experience, it's very rare for somebody to go from here to here and get it.
Yeah.
It's not impossible. It's just rare. So my belief is that's why, at least with Bob's stuff, he ratcheted it up and had, one program after another. And the next thing you know, you find people at this level and even higher that are really connecting the source. So I definitely agree with that. I think it's kind of a necessary, I don't want to say evil, but a necessary step in the evolution of awareness.
Yeah, it's like your awakening. It's part of the awakening.
Mhm.
Yeah,
You want to take over from here?
sure.
Hey, I have a quick question, if that's all
Sure.
right.
Absolutely. Always.
On the previous page, it talks about personality. How do you interpret that?
Dan Barnett. What's inside Dan Barnett? Dan Barnett is the personality. That's how I would see it.
It says you have to give up your personality. Is that mean ego?
That means all of it, in my opinion. And what she said there too is how you even associate your name. You're not your name, right? You're not your body. In my opinion, it's when we take time to transcend or calm the mind and either meditate or connect to source, and we take time to sort of leave the human stuff behind, your job, your income, your name, your wife. Those are all personality things. But when Maddie said that, she wasn't kidding, right? How you associate Dan Barnett, that's just sound.
Okay.
So I think that's why I love meditation so much. And I shouldn't say I'm trying. I'm getting better and better at doing. I did it this morning, but the twice a day, every day has been a challenge. But when I do it, I love it because you're just transcending. It's not any. It's just sort of thoughtlessness, and your natural state is to connect to source. It's just that we're so damn busy every day in the mechanical world. We don't take time to calm the mind and neutralize the conscious, so the subconscious can just naturally do what it's supposed to. But yeah, ego is definitely a part of personality. So is all of your emotions and how you think of yourself, how you think other people think about you. It's that whole ball of wax.
A quick comment. You brought up Bob Proctor and how he approaches this. And one of the skills that I observed Bob had that is really good is he met people where they were. So you talk about different levels, different courses, different programs, different levels of awareness that he would teach through his programs. He had the unique ability, I think you do too, Brian, of matching who you're talking to and where they're at. Because it's not about taking them from, like you said, from 0 to 100. It's about from 0 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 15. And I think, there's many coaches on this call, and I think that's a great skill to develop, to meet people where they are. But when we're not in coaching mode, be the best you can be at the highest level of awareness you can be. And it's inspiring to people. They can feel it. So when people come to the E100 for the first time, and they've been in other groups, they can feel the energy of this group. It's because collectively we've studied together and raised our awareness to a certain point. And I think that's really powerful. But there's those of you and those of us who are in the coaching world, it's really helpful to be able to meet people where they are and bring them along.
That's a really good point, Dan. Yeah, because you're right. It's not 0 to 100. Somebody might be at 35 already.
Yeah, exactly.
And your ability to recognize that through a little bit of conversation, I think is key as a coach for sure. And yeah, I love what you said about too. It's just not while you're in coaching mode. It's living that wheel of life, right? Which we're all, you know, we all have our own challenges in certain areas. Nobody here is perfect, but I think it's the striving for perfection that kind of brings us all together.
I think what's cool too is it's not a scale of 1 to 100. I think there's infinite levels of awareness that we can ascend to. So, you know, it's never done, right? And when we're transition on and we come back again, we start over or we start from where we were. I don't know. I'll let you know when I come back. But it's pretty cool when you think about it. Anyway, sorry.
It's
Thanks for
very cool. No, don't be sorry. This is exactly what this is intended for. I want you guys to engage when you have thought on any of these words, because that's what makes a mastermind a mastermind. Matt, do you want to start from here?
God does not run after you when you leave his house. He lets you work out your own salvation. He lets you find yourself. He knows nothing outside himself by which to divide or to separate himself. In fact, he doesn't even know that you have gone away. If he did know that you were away, you could never get back. What God knows is unchangeable. The Father's house is not a beautiful building up in the skies or a place that has to be reached through death. It is a state of mind which anyone can have. It has no location in time or space, but it is just as real as the physical house in which you live. Think of it as a state of consciousness in which you discover that the all good is yours when you claim it. It is in you as you, it is you. How do you know that this is true? How do you know that anything you identify yourself with cannot be attached from you? Because that is the only way you can know about anything. What takes place outside your mind, you know nothing about. That's crazy.
Which is almost everything, right?
Yeah. The Father's house is to you what you are to it, for it is a mental and spiritual state which you establish for yourself. Do you see now why you have never been in that flesh and blood body of yours, and why there is no way in which you could ever get into it? It is because it is in you.
I just want to look at this one sentence here and see what you guys think about this. The Father's house is to you what you are to it. Greg?
So the last section and up to this point, it made me think about, you know, when we leave the house, you know, God doesn't leave. He's always there, right? And so when you go, you know, it's going back to source. It's really interesting because it's never changing, and it's so simple. And I think we can take great solace in knowing that, you know, that's the unchanging thing. And I think that is, you know, as you just said, like we react so much to external stimulus that affects our internal or intrinsic, you know, bodies, right? That we're always you know, most humans are in a reactive state all the time. And they live that way, and they don't even, you know, the power of awareness, of course, which we, you know, the book we previously read is such a good book too, because it just relates to me, just how simple it is to always remain in source. And that's why I think, you know, I think the price we pay to remain in a high vibrational state is the daily study. I've actually just recently, the last 2 weeks, have been doing Bob Proctor's daily morning routine. If you don't know what that is, you can ask, but it's really powerful to set yourself up for the day, but you have to do it. I think Matt had indicated earlier, like it's a 7-day-a-week thing, because otherwise you're leaving the source, you're leaving the house. But I mean, the power is there and it's so amazing. But a lot of people don't ever tap into it.
I would say most, right?
Most, yeah. 100%.
Judging by the results of the world, I would say most people, yeah.
Correct.
No, I love that. And yeah, when you say a little bit of sacrifice, you're right. But Bob used to always say that the word sacrifice simply means giving up something of a lower value for something of a higher value.
Yep.
Human beings tend to look at the word sacrifice as a negative term, almost like discipline. Discipline is not punishment. Discipline is your ability to give yourself a command and follow it. It usually leads to great things. But we attach punishment to discipline because of our upbringing or something. So sacrifice is not a bad word. It just means giving up something of a lower value for something of a higher value. Like, you know, eating donuts and pizza and fried chicken is awesome, but giving that up to live in a perfectly healthy body is of a higher value, right? So when I look at this, this is the farthest house is to what you are to it. It's a belief system. It's any individual's understanding of co-creation and connecting to source to create in an easy, calm, and effortless way, as opposed to grinding and hustling and just trying to human through it. That's kind of how I see that.
Yeah, and Brian, one of the things that you said about the discipline to remain in source no longer becomes discipline, but a preferred way of living. And so you really have to look at it from, yeah, I mean, starting an exercise regimen, starting a diet, whatever, like those all take discipline. But, you know, when you start experiencing the results, right, you're more inclined to stick with it, right? Your life is much better as a result of those decisions. And it's in a similar fashion. This is just an elevated level, because a lot of people that are fit and in shape perhaps don't have a mindset, you know, that's conducive to living their best life either. So it's just one of those things where it is all discipline, but it's discipline to remain in source, which the outcome is a much better way to live, obviously.
100%. And we know through repetition, right? It takes
Yes.
discipline to get something from the conscious to the subconscious to form a habit. But once it's there, you're on autopilot. You can be in a constant state of connection to source, or a constant state of health, or constant state of gratitude. And that's why Bob did those early exercises of, you know, writing your goal 10 times in the morning, 10 things you're grateful for, because at first we have to consciously auto-suggest the new principles from the conscious into the subconscious. But you're right. I mean, after X amount of time, it just gets easier and easier and easier. And then you don't even think about it. It just becomes part of your routine. So yeah, I agree 100% on that. Antonio?
So I had a different perspective on that one in the previous page. So I look at this as a bit of a mirror. The Father's house is to you what you are to it. And I think it's energy out, energy back. Although the Father's house within you is of supreme consciousness, I think that if your perspective and you treat it a certain way, it's not that in turn it's going to give you negativity, but because you're so your perspective is warped, I think that that's what you get back, is just kind of a mirror of yourself. That's kind of how I looked at it as far as what it is to you. There's
So one of the things that comes up for me, and again, this is just my opinion based on study over time, is energy out, energy back. If you're not putting good energy out, then you're going to get negative energy back, because there's no neutral energy. So when you said not negative energy, I actually think it is negative energy, because it's one or the other, and it can't be both, and there's no such thing as neutral energy. It might be just slightly negative or slightly positive, but understanding the law of cause and effect, the energy out, energy back thing, keeping ourselves in mostly a high vibration, you know, living in a moral, ethical way, you know, most of the time, mostly healthy all the time, right? I think if we can keep in a high percentage of all these things as we look at the wheel of life, then that law of cause and effect is going to continue to serve us, and we'll continue to evolve in a direction that we deem is, you know, kind of what we want. Anybody else on that before we move forward? All right, Antonio, can you take over from here, the spiritual you?
The spiritual you is above the body and not subject to it. You can think about your body, but your body cannot think about you. You can move your body around, but your body cannot move you or itself around. It is governed by your consciousness and your thought about it. How then does your body get so much power in your experience? How does it attract sickness, disease, pain, misery, and disorder? Why does it give you trouble? Because you have traded places with it. You stopped being one and you have become two.
I want to stop there for a second. I just want a question for you guys. Does your body attract disease, pain, sickness, misery, and disorder? Or do you attract that and your body is expressing it? And I'm just curious to what you guys think about that. Here's another way to look at it. When we pass on, we leave our body no longer has the ability to attract. When I look at that, and this was the last two paragraphs are just awesome about you're not your body can't move you, you move your body, right? It's really highlighting that we are first spirit, we're consciousness. And we're expressing through our body, we set up vibrations in our body but the body's not doing the attracting. It's your consciousness through your body. It's part of that spirit, intellect, body. So my opinion is that attraction comes from the synergy of the three, not just your body. But again, just my opinion. Carrie?
Yeah, I think I'm twofold on this. Personally, I've experienced where my thoughts have brought it on, where I've said, I never get sick except for once a year, and it's always a sinus infection, and I'm down for a week.
Mm-hmm.
And then I caught myself one time and I said, well, hell, why am I bringing that on myself, right? But then there's another time when I fell down the stairs and I completely shattered and blew out my right ankle. And it took me down. I was on bed rest for 4 months. And so something I believe, because I obviously wasn't saying that verbally, but I think something subconsciously was either trying to guide me or to have me rest for a minute. So I don't know. I kind of feel like it's twofold.
Well, I would agree with you there. There's some reason that happened, right? And some people do worry, and I'm not saying you do, but some people do worry about getting hurt, or oh, I would never go skiing, I don't want to get hurt, and even just a slight amount of worry about anything might set up an attraction to cause something like that to happen. Or like you said, maybe you just needed to take a break. When I 2 summers ago, when I slipped off the dock and broke 3 ribs, it's like I had to take a break for a minute. And I was going 100 miles an hour, right? And that's how I kind of look at it. But I also did a lot of studying, connected to source, a lot of meditating just while I was laying there in bed. And it just caused me to slow down for a minute. So that's how I chose to label that in a positive way. And I could have labeled it in a whole different way, right? And it's my choice, but that's a good example. And I love what you said there too. You're like, well, there must have been some reason for that to happen, and maybe it was to slow down or something. But that's using the power of assumption and how we label things positive or negative. So people look at me really weird when I say that wasn't a bad thing. That whole process is like, it's just a thing. It's how I label it and process it. So, Mr. Antonio, want to take over from here?
When you forgot that the creator and the created are one, matter is spirit made manifest. The spiritual and the physical ceased to operate together. Personality took over. We all learned sooner or later that personality is the prodigal son in the far country. It is that self which wastes its substance and fills our hospitals, sanatoriums, and cemeteries. Every day, the newspapers tell us about someone whose me has gotten out of hand. They go into great detail about the pitfalls, temptations, and dangers which surround them, the accidents, tragedies, and mishaps which befall them, and the penalties and punishments which are meted out to them. One day he is strong, and the next day weak. One day he is on top, he is on the mountaintop, and the next day he is in the valley. One day he is reaching for the stars, the next day he is slipping in the mind. Let me keep going.
Sure, yeah, until something comes up for somebody.
Sure. Untouched by spirit, he believes more in the power of evil than in the power of good. He misuses and subverts his power. He is slow to recognize God's presence in time of trouble. Living on the circumference, he finds the greater forces within him dormant. Seeing everything with a view to his own advantage, he closes the channels through which he receives sustenance. When the mind is divided, personality is always in trouble because it makes wrong choices.
Let's chat about that for a second. What does it mean when the mind is divided? What does that mean to you guys?
There's a quote in the Bible that says, a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. And I think it's being decisive and deciding whether you're going to be positive or negative. I think it really is our choice with the free will that we've been given by God's grace. So I don't know if that helps, but that's what pops into my mind when I hear that.
Yeah, no, it's kind of what pops into mind too about being divided. It's when you're not contemplating source and you're just sort of making decisions through your human or in a reactive state instead of in a responsive state. So not trusting intuition, letting paradigm drive you, past programming, other people's thoughts. So that's what I get out of that. Antonio?
I think it also has to do about your point of attention. So in the paragraph before that talked about penalties, mishaps, problems, evils, which is a point of attention. And so if your mind is, half looking at like the negative, half looking at the positive, your mind is divided. And then what sprouts from that is perspectives within your own personality that gives you wrong choices because you're half in, half out.
Mhm.
That's how I look at it that way, is that you're kind of not all in on the positive. You're kind of jumping back and forth, and that's what causes problems.
No, I like that perspective. Yeah, like you said, not being all in, being kind of wishy-washy or half in and half out. Let's see. Keaton, you want to take over from here, bud?
You got it. Why did Jesus represent personality as living in a far country? Because its limited material existence. Shut off from its source, it must of necessity experience both famine and want. Living in a state of apartness, man not only lives beyond his mental equivalence, but overdraws his material and physical resources. He does not have the strength to match his proposed effort, judging according to appearances. He serves his troubles instead of rising above them, trading his spiritual liberty for material security. He loses both. Oh my God. Living in a state of self-reference, he makes his own frustrations.
Maddie, get your hand up.
This should be dedicated to all entrepreneurs ever.
Oh man,
Because-
I want to read it again. That last like.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Judging according to appearances, he serves his troubles instead of rising above them. Trading his spiritual liberty for material security, he loses both. Living in a state of self-reference, he makes his own frustrations. Yeah, this is speaking to me really heavily right now too, just with what's going on. So,
Well, 100%. You're a young entrepreneur on the run, right? You're hustling. You're moving. So you're in the state of massive creation. It's so easy to get lost in the mechanical. Start working 80 hours a week and like just not paying attention to your family, not paying attention to your health, not paying attention to your spirituality. So easy to get out of balance, especially as a young man or woman when you're trying to make your way in the world, because you don't have some of the experiences that older people might have, like divorces or foreclosures or health issues. So the beautiful thing about you being in this group is there's a lot of us here who have. You can learn from other people's experiences, right?
absolutely.
So cool that you're so young and in this group.
Yeah, I feel very blessed and grateful to be a part of this group with all you guys.
100%. Lenny?
So Brian, last several paragraphs that we read keep on jumping out to me to say it's conscious versus subconscious and all driven by ego. That's really what I'm hearing in the last several paragraphs. I think that if we can tame the ego, and perhaps we do that as we get older, we allow the subconscious and this ocean of abundance, which is around every one of us, to be more aware to us at that time.
I love that. It does seem to be something that we figure out through lessons over time. I guess we gain wisdom with time, right? And it's too bad this stuff isn't taught in like high school and grade school and at an earlier age. But yeah, I do feel like the universe can beat you into submission until you lose that ego. Definitely had some of that. Let's see. Mr. Ian, you want to take over from here?
But there is merriment and rejoicing in the power of evil. I'm sorry. But there is merriment and rejoicing in the Father's house now. The prodigal has returned and has been accepted with joy. It is the joy which Isaiah felt when he said, "The mountains and the hills shall break forth before you into singing, and all the trees of the field shall clap their hands," which Job experienced as he heard the Lord in the whirlwind and said, Where wast thou when the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy? It is euphoria, which the Greek named to describe the state in which everything is in balance. It is a joy of the shepherd when he found the lost sheep. It is a joy of the woman when she found her coin. It is a joy of a mother when her son returns from war unharmed. It is a joy of a family when a loved one returns home from the hospital healed. The Father's house is a blaze of light. Happiness fills the air. There is music and dancing and feasting. It is a momentous occasion. A reconciliation has been made. A divided mind has been united. The broken has been made whole. Communication has been restored. Can we go back to that?
Sure.
It's interesting that the last thing in that paragraph is that communication has been restored. It didn't start with
what does that mean to you?
communication. Well, it just struck me funny that usually we say, let's communicate first, and then, we'll rectify an argument, or we'll, it's all about lack of communication or communication. Communication is key. And here it's almost saying that you do those other things first, and then communication is restored, true communication.
So I'm looking at communication between who?
You in the house.
Yeah.
That's what I read that to be too. It's like, so what if communication was taught at an early age and never broke down?
I get what Ian is saying though, because, oftentimes we can't see ourselves falling away from the house until we're so far gone that we're like, oh my gosh, what have I done? I've got to get back. And then communication has been restored, but it's that awareness and the separation that allows you to rejoice, like as it says, rejoice in the Father's house, and restore that communication. Like there's so many times in my life where I haven't realized that I was away from the house until I was so far gone that I was like, oh my God.
Same. And the funny thing is I think that's part of the power of a weekly mastermind. Like who else besides a group like this takes time to study things like this together? Like nobody's working right now. I feel like you're all paying attention. Not certainly nowhere else that I've been where you actually take time to ponder these things. And I think this is when you actually come back to the awareness and understanding of keeping that open channel of communication, because I've done that a million times. I don't feel like you do see it unless you have an accountability group, or you ponder it, or you're studying spirit or meditating or things of that nature. Because I think everybody here can point to a time in their life where they drifted away and just was totally in the human and had some things that weren't pleasant happen. Keaton?
Yeah, not to like argue, but the story of the prodigal son is like two brothers, and one goes off away from the house. He thinks he can figure it all out.
Right.
And when he comes back, the father's rejoicing, throws a feast, excited and everything, and the feeling is like amazing. But that the son who never left, was frustrated because he didn't get the same, welcome back or something like that. So I'm just trying to put that in the context of this whole thing, and it's it makes me wonder if like you do need to leave the house for a period of time to like either get, I don't know that it's growth or what it happens to be, but like
I don't know if you have to, but that's certainly the story. It's the story of leaving and kind of falling on your face and coming back. And the brother that stayed was like, what about me? And
right.
The answer was, well, the reward is never leaving in the first place. So I don't know if you need to or not. That I'd be definitely open to people's opinions on that. I think most of us have and do. I guess there's probably other people that haven't, but I do feel like most people either don't connect in the first place or go down a path and then discover source and spirit over time. It's a good question, Maddie.
I think that's also though why we're in the human body though, because if we weren't in our flesh, then we wouldn't have the experience of going away from the house in the first place. So it's almost like we need to go away from the house to remind ourselves that we're human. Because if we never left the house, we'd be spirit.
Interesting.
That's what came to me, at least. And then, yeah, when you go away from the house, you learn so much, you grow so much. And then because you were away, you know so much more how good the house is. Otherwise, you would never know how good it is.
Mm.
It's like law of polarity.
Yeah, I think I'm more in line with what you're saying. I think it's a part of the overall design
Mm-hmm.
is to go out into the world and I guess attempt to create, not being connected to source. You learn and grow, but my higher opinion of all this, and I've said this to you guys before, is that we're all an expression of universal consciousness or God. And to me, that entity must have wanted to experience all possible things physically. And that's what I believe we are, but that's just my opinion. So I don't think I've ever known anybody that hasn't gone away, and some forever and just into the grave and done, and then others back, right? I've never met anybody that just was born, connected, and never was not connected. Has anybody here ever met anybody like that? Or are you like that yourselves?
I think that'd be called a narcissist.
Maybe. Ara, what's up, bud?
Well, Mary kind of stole my thunder, but if I may, that's parallel to something else. If you're always born, if we can parallel to money for 1 second. If you're born into money and you always have had it, you appreciate it a lot less than if you earn it yourself or you go bankrupt and you come back and make it. So once you leave the house of wealth, in my example, you come back, you'll appreciate it a lot more, and that's where that is could be parallel with Maddie's thoughts.
No, that's actually brilliant, because I think that applies to everything. Like, because they're talking about spirituality here, but yeah, finances, love, right? Take love for granted, or health. You take health for granted. The universe has a way of saying, wait a minute.
Tell me about it.
I love your point of view because it applies to every area in the wheel of life, right? And sometimes we need a reminder to remind us how valuable these individual spokes are on the wheel, and to be grateful and to not lose focus on them. So I actually love that, Ara. Love it, love it. Well, awesome, everybody. Hope you get some good value out of today. Steve and Chris, welcome to the family. Hopefully you enjoyed our little mastermind. We do this once in a while. Next week, we'll probably have a hot seat with somebody. We got half a dozen people that are ready for hot seats. So I'm going to reach out to you guys and see who wants to do that. And you'll see what it's like when the whole group pours into one person to help them either overcome a challenge or develop a business or launch something. So I'm really looking forward to that. And until next week, guys, be well and God bless. We'll see you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. See ya.